equation. Let's go ahead and apply it to some of the physics problems you may encounter. So let's go ahead. Let's say that you have a situation like this. You have a wave that's traveling at a frequency. I'm going to just label this. So this is frequency of 450 hertz, okay? And its wavelength is 0.007 meters, okay? It's actually not that hard to go ahead and figure out. Actually, all we need to do is use the wave equation here. Now, as I said before, the wave equation is actually pretty simple. You're just multiplying two factors here. So the wave speed is multiplied of the wavelength times the frequency. Okay, so if we go ahead and just plug in the two values, we get 0.007 multiplied by 450 hertz. Now do note, this is a somewhat large number times a very small number. Now, if we go ahead and we take 450, okay, times 0.007, and if you do that on your own calculator, you're going to get this value of, 3.15. Now, already asking, okay, so what are the units? Well, let's go ahead and just take a look at it, do some dimensional analysis. If you remember, wavelength is a length, right? It has under meters. So we know that whatever's here has to do with meters. What's a little trickier is frequency. And this is what you need to remember. Hertz is inverse time. Okay, so it's going to be 1 over seconds. So 1 hertz is 1 inverse second. Okay, so if you think about it, we're just kind of multiplying meters times inverse seconds. And that gets you the same meters a second. Easy, right? That's all you need to do. Okay, let's go ahead and take in another one. Let's try one that's a little trickier, okay? That you have this, right? You have a wave with a velocity of 400 meters per second, and this is your wave speed, right? Wave speed. I'm going to go ahead and write that down here. And this is not a frequency. Notice this has seconds in it. It's also represented by capital T. So this is my period. So before we get into anything, I want to make this into either... Well, I don't want to mess around with the equation we have so much. Because remember, we have this, right? V equals to wavelength over frequency, okay? And note, what I want to do is find the wavelength here. Because I have this here. And I have this here. So I need to find wavelength, right? Well, it's going to take some division, but I need to actually have a frequency. Luckily, I do know this. That my frequency is the inverse of the period. Okay, so in other words, I'm going to have to invert this in order to get a frequency. Okay, so I'm going to start off there, right? Let's start off by finding that frequency by inversing my period, so that way I have this f here. So I'm going to follow this equation here. So inverse of, and this is my value, 0.002. Okay. And if I go ahead and plug it into my calculator here, I'm going to go ahead, so 1 divided by 0.002 is actually 500. Okay, now you're probably wondering, okay, so what unit is? Well, notice it's frequency, right? That's hertz. Easy. So I made this into a frequency so that way I can plug it into my wave equation. Now, I have to rearrange this equation to find that wavelength, right? Because that's what I'm looking for here. I have my wave speed, I have my period, but I need a wavelength in order to understand this wave. So I need to rearrange this equation. So I have V equals to wavelength times frequency. And I want to figure out wavelengths. Well, all you need to do is divide by frequency on both sides. By. Okay, so this cancels out. And I'm left with this. This is my wave speed divided by my frequency. Okay, so now I have all the tools I need, right? I know this and I know this. Okay, let's do this. So I got 400. Okay, meters per second divided by 500 hertz. Okay, notice this is actually going to result in a small number, I believe. And this is kind of off the top of my head, but I should really double check with the calculator. So 4, well, you can reduce this to 4 divided by 5. Let's see, and then after, let's see, 4 divided by 5 here. I'm sorry, I'm having some difficulty. Yeah, I noticed that's 0.8. And remember, wavelength is a length, meters. It's one equation, yes, but unfortunately there's a few things you need to be sure you're taking into account. Units, the form of frequency that you have, and then after note, it can be rearranged. So when you're actually doing these equations, you want to be aware of these types of factors as you continue. All right, hopefully this goes ahead and helps you as you move on and figure out these problems. I'm going to go ahead and see you in the next slide.